So today we are going to do a technical training on the Leica Reality Capture 2024 software updates. Myself, Kirsty, Mackie, and Lennon, Bedford will be going through all of these software updates with you. So I'm going to start with a quick note about the Arch and Z conference, and then we're going to overview the updates and go through some tips and tricks on both of them. I'll go through Register 360 and Lennon will go through Cyclone 3DR. If you have any questions as we're going, please can you put them in the questions tab via the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll answer them at the end. So thank you so much to everyone who came to our Arch and Z conference. It was our inaugural Arch and Z conference, so the first one we've had. It went really well. We had a great lineup of speakers, so thank you to you all for your great presentations. There was a lot of engagement and we sold out before the event, which was just fantastic. And so far the feedback has been great. If you have anything that you want us to improve for next year, please make sure you filled out that feedback form. We also had another form, which was the Arch and Z competition. So for those of you who were at the event or your organization was at the event, you're eligible to enter this competition. You just have to answer the question of what would you like to test the mobile Leica BLK Arc scanner on. The submissions end tonight at 5 p.m. and all you need to do is give a small paragraph. So if you are missing the form or would like it, you can scan the QR code on the left here, or we'll send them round as well. Definitely worth it for a free week of hire for a mobile laser scanner. So now I'm going to go through the Cyclone Register 360 Plus updates. This actually dropped in the 13th of December last year. It was a little pre-Christmas present for us all. We are actually expecting a 23.1.1 to come out in the next week or two. So if you are in a large organization and it's hard to get these IT updates, then it might be worth waiting until that new one drops, just so that your IT people don't get upset with you. So for the updates, I'm going to go through some key things, 4 areas here. The first thing I'm going to focus on is this new data architecture and what it actually means. Then I'm going to go through how to get your databases into the 23.1 edition, sorry, 23 1.0 edition. Then I'm going to go through some registration improvements with this edition. So how you can use your classification manager to improve your cloud-to-cloud results. So by removing artifacts or trees. Then I'm going to go through improving the application of control with DAC scanners. It just basically lets you choose whether or not you're using the level of the scanner or the control. And then I'm going to go through optimizing with cloud-to-cloud only or target-to-target only. Those last two are actually feature parity requests from Cyclone Core over to Register 360. So for those of you that were Cyclone Core users or are Cyclone Core users, those have now been migrated across as features. And then the final thing I'll mention briefly is limit box tiling. So Leica have completely changed the back end of Register 360. The idea for this was so that they can change it so that future developments are a lot easier, but so that they can make the whole process a lot more efficient. So with this update, they have decreased project sizes quite drastically. They've decreased the publishing times and they've decreased the published output sizes. So you're looking at faster writing speeds and more compression of the data. It does depend which device you're talking about when it comes to how successful these decreases are. So for the BLK2GO, for instance, you can expect a 50% faster publishing time, which is pretty huge. You can expect different variations for the BLK2GO or the RTC. So looking at 37% for the RTC versus the 50% for the BLK2GO there with the publishing times. But yeah, quite significant changes across the board. For RTC data for the published sizes, you can see a 30% decrease in those sizes of outputs. So this is pretty amazing changes that will make your lives a lot easier in terms of storing the vast amounts of data that is created from reality capture. Another change that has come with this is that the rendering engine for Register 360 has completely changed. It's made the points a lot brighter and more visual, so you can more easily see them. This is particularly useful in going through and doing limit boxes or true size there and seeing the points there. And made the points a lot clearer and a bit faster with the loading. They've also added this new shaded rendering, which is really awesome. It helps define the edges of the features quite well. So you just go and pick that below review and optimize. You can see here, Silo Park, just gone out and scanned that for a bit of fun. And this plant is quite a good way to see that shaded rendering in action. Just see those edges there quite well. So as part of this update, there has also been a new output file, which is the LGSx. So this LGSx file is now the replacement for LGS. You can still open LGS without the X in the new editions, but LGSx is where everything is going. So they would definitely recommend updating your LGS files to LGSx files. So what I'm showing here is just a bit of a difference. I'm going to replay this in a second because I think it's quite key, some of the things we're seeing here. But the rendering that you actually get for the LGS versus the LGSx is quite different. So if we go back to the beginning of this video, as I load in these two files, I've got a little message for the LGS one saying that that's becoming an outdated format. As you zoom in, you can kind of see the ground points. They're a lot more smooth on the right-hand side with the LGSx file. It's a lot more visually appealing there. And then if we look at this container at the back, you can make out the text on the right-hand side a lot better than you can on the left-hand side. So it's definitely improved that rendering experience. And for those of you that missed that rendering on the container one, you can just see here that difference between the two texts there. So it's the same file exactly. I've just converted the file into an LGSx, so I have both to show you. And then this is the same data set, but you can see on the right hand side, it's just a bit smoother with the colorization. So if you have existing LGS files and you want to convert them to LGSx files, there is a data converter that has been released already to help you do this. So you will get a much more compressed file. So that's a major benefit for your storage, is reducing that size, but then you can also have the benefit of that improved rendering. This also has a batch converter, so you can just batch all the LGS files and convert them across quite easily. It's pretty fast, but obviously it will depend on your data sizes. Another benefit to upgrading and getting that LGSx format is that you can get TrueView VR for free with LGSx. So for those of you that have those VR headsets that you got when you were very excited to get into it and then left them in a cupboard and they started getting dusty, now is the time to dust them off and give this TrueView VR a proper go. So there is an important note when it comes to all of these great updates. To get all of these compressions and better rendering, you will have to convert your databases into the 23.1.0. Sorry, I've just noticed if I've got a typo there. So if the project is before 23.1, then you need to make sure that it's updated to that edition. So how do you do that? When you come into Register 360, there'll be a little X next to all the projects that are in 23.1 that are not actually in the 23.1 format. And you'll get a little note which says, this project needs to be updated. Do you wish to proceed? So it's pretty simple. I have one dataset that I found left with a little red X in it. I've just clicked it here and it has gone through quite fast. So this isn't sped up or anything. This is just the speed for it. And then it comes through and then you've got the same data as before. So it's a pretty simple process to update those files. This is some BLK2Go data around our office. But I know some of you will be thinking, that's great, Kirsty, but that project you just showed is tiny. I imagine it is compared to a lot of what you have. So my answers to you there would be that there is a batch process, which can definitely help with managing all of those large ones. So you go to the pancake stack and you select multiple projects within your projects tab, and then there's a convert button. Unfortunately, I have now ran out of projects that I can convert to show you. But I would recommend doing this overnight. So before you leave the office, or maybe on a Friday, just set it off on a Friday if you've got loads of data. I know some of you have thousands of scans. So if you just leave it to run overnight, and then it'll do all of it if you select all of them. So there is a key note here that we have to say, which is that once you go to 23 1.0, the databases are not backward compatible. So if you want to have a backup of a pre-23.1 version, you should export and archive that file first. So if you want to archive a file, just a reminder, it's under that pancake stack, and you can choose whether to do project archive or fast archive. The fast archive is the instantaneous export, and that just gives you the project folder where you have that labeled jumble of letters, which shows you the whole project there. And you can re-import that later if you want to. And then the alternative is the .raf file. The .raf file is the compressed version, which people tend to prefer because of that compression that you're getting with the file. So both of those are kind of your backup options there if you want to have a version that can do previous iterations of Register 360. So for the conversion process to run sufficiently, you do need to have the right hard disk space. So this is the same as usual, just need to make sure you have enough space on your local SSD drives. So it's the same statement as well. On the right, I've got a project example, which is 45.1 gigabytes. And the rule of having 3 times your project folder of free space is what we need here. So I'm going to need 135.3 gigabytes free to be able to convert this project successfully. It does get a bit nuanced, a bit more nuanced, which is that you kind of need 2 parts of that in your temporary drive if it's not all on the same drive. So at least 90.2 gigabytes will need to be for my temporary file path, and 45.1 will be for my projects folder drive. So just the project where it's sitting. If I have lost you there, I am sorry. So just to explain that a little bit more clearly and visually, you go to your pancake stack, you can see your project size here. This root folder is where you'll need 1 part of the storage space. So that 45.1 gigabytes for that project I was just showing. And then you'll need to go to your temporary folder, which is just under the storage tab. So just below the archive folder, you've got that temporary file, and that's where you'll need to make sure you have 90 gigabytes of SSD space available. So definitely make sure that you've checked all of those file paths before you start converting. And if you're doing the batch process, just check which is your largest project and make sure that that's the one that meets the requirements of this storage space. So on to the registration improvements. There's quite a few registration improvements to go through. The first one around the classification being improved. One thing I would mention is a lot of people ask me why their classification isn't working, and it's usually just because it's not been installed. The classification is not automatically installed, and quite often if you have IT settings, they might not have let you do the classification install. The reason it's a separate install, like it comes after when you've done your Register 360 install, it'll say, do you want to install the classification manager or install the classification? Is because you do need quite high specs to run it. So these are the specs from Leica on the screen here, all around the graphics card that you're using in the GPU RAM. Only NVIDIA GPUs are supported, so AMDs won't work with it, In general, the experience with NVIDIA graphics cards is much better with the Leica products. This is especially true with Cyclone 3DR as well. So the change to the classification is that an update cloud-to-cloud points option has been added to the classification manager. Now, this is really awesome because if you have trees or you have people that have moved around the scene and you need to take them out of the cloud-to-cloud to make that stronger, then you can go through and disable those units and apply it. So I've got an example here from that silo park data I was showing. So in the registration here, you can see some trees around the site. If I go into my classification manager, I can then untick the 3 top green ones for the vegetation that it's found. And then I go update cloud to cloud and it will take out those ones that I have just visually removed. So pretty awesome. And this is just an example of that cloud to cloud registration option. So on the left, I've got it before with the trees and then on the right without them. So just some arrows there to give you a bit of an idea of where it's gone. So another registration improvement is this new feature that's been added into the settings about using level from DAC scanners. So this is probably more relevant to all the surveyors in the room. So what this means is you can apply the control to a bundle without changing its level. So you can preserve the level of that setup, whether it's a RTC 360, which has been taken on high accuracy tilt, or a P series scanner that's dual axis compensated, or some of our older devices that are C series if you still have those. So this was done so that we could reach feature parity with Cyclone Core, which has this function in nested registrations, and it enables the Z vector to be unchanged, giving it the same weight for the level as the control. So this is just for the RTC 360 with its high accuracy tilt. This came out in the firmware version 5. It is optional, so you just have to check the ... on the right corner of your RTC 360 screen to make sure it's enabled. If your high accuracy tilt is enabled, then you get this line through the setups on the screen. If it's not enabled, it'll be a dot. So you know that you can do the DAC setting if you've got this line through the data. So what this looks like in practice, I can show you here. So this is some data from our Christchurch office. So that was just some control marks I've imported. And then I can apply the control. It's gone through. I've got all of that and all of my residuals are nice on the right hand side. So if you go to your settings, it's just under the links and it's the very bottom one, use level from dual axes compensated when apply control. So just make sure that you've done that before you apply it, and then you'll see that result in the error vector in your Z values when you apply it. So another thing to keep in mind that's come out is optimization options. This one's really awesome. So you can optimize with target to target only or cloud to cloud only. The key benefit with this is that it makes it easier to identify where your errors are coming from. So if you have a very large registration and you've kind of got a bit lost on whether or not your error is coming from those targets or from the cloud to cloud, then this is for you. So using that same data set, but without the control being applied, I've just got this warehouse. I've got a load of targets up in the area. It's P series data, and I can see some of the errors on the right hand side. Still a bit high. It was 60 in there for the targets. So this is kind of how it's looking now. If I go to optimize with targets only, it goes red. Sorry, this video is going a little bit fast. So with that going red, it makes it a bit easier to identify which links are problematic. You can then easily switch on to the cloud to cloud only, see how that changes it. This is actually disabling all of the targets. And then if you go back again, visualizing it. So if you go to the error tab or go into the individual links, you'll see where the errors are coming from. So I can see that 5 has blown up and it's got an 83mm error that's coming up. So if I click on the 5, it will highlight it red, and then I can zoom in and see what's going on. And you can see that target there is a picking error with the target that's come in. So another thing I would mention here is that this also makes it easier to delete those targets that are erroneous. So you can see right here, if I try and delete this now, it will not let me because it's active in a constraint. But if I then optimize with cloud to cloud only, it disables those constraints, and I can go and click on the target and remove it now because it's no longer being used. So that was a quick tip that I found quite useful. Awesome. So that brings us on to the last update here, which is limit box tiling. So for limit box tiling, there's the ability to go into your limit box manager for your existing limit boxes, and then you can click on it, and then down the bottom there is a subdivide option, and you can let it systematically split up the point cloud by however many you've selected. This is quite useful for anyone who is doing online environments where they want to deal with the data as tiles. Quite common for drone data to be split into tiles for GIS online viewers. So for some of those larger laser scanning projects, you might want to give this a try as well. So that I don't go on too long, that was kind of the key things I wanted to cover here. If you want me to come and talk to you about any of these updates, I will be happy to. But just to summarize what I've gone over a bit more, new data architecture, so decreased project sizes, decreased publishing times, decreased published output sizes, improved visualization through a new rendering engine, the new LGSx format, which we saw has got the improved outputs, and the free TrueView VR with that LGSx format. So lots of excitement with the update there. Then I've gone through a bit of database conversions. So you can do that quite easily when you go into the software. There's a batch process. You just need to make sure you have 3 times the project size for your largest one available to do this. It must be on your local SSD drive. And you cannot take these databases back to 23.1.03 or before once you have converted them to 23.1. So that's a really important note if you do want to have backups. Then I've gone through some of the registration improvements, so that classification improvement with cloud to cloud, and then the improved application of control with DAC scanners and optimizing with cloud to cloud only or target only, and then the limit box tiling. So that is everything I had to share with you today. So I will pass over to Lennon now.
Thanks, Kirsty. That was great. Yes, it's now my pleasure to give you an update to the latest release of Cyclone 3DR. So once you have your registered point cloud of Register 360, the next challenge is how to extract value out of that raw data. And Cyclone 3DR is a standalone software which is focused on deliverables from point clouds. So for those of you who are not aware, Cyclone 3DR is a modular software, and there are additions or license packages focused on specific industry workflows and applications. So there's a surveying package, which is our most popular, and includes survey workflows such as virtual surveying, tunnels, DTM extraction, and the like. There's an AEC package, which is focused on the building construction segment, again uses auto classification, and then allows the import of CAD and BIM models for inspection, for construction verification, progress monitoring, and the like. And in the past, there's been a very specific module focused on the tank inspection workflow, and specifically the API standard related to that. And what is new with the 2024 release is a plant edition. So the plant edition incorporates the old tank inspection module and adds a whole bundle of workflows that are useful in the plant segment. So most excitingly is the new scanned pipe feature, which is brand new in the 2024 release. And in the same edition, you also have the BIM CAD model inspection tools, the ability to import those BIM files in IFC and Revit, and the ability to do visual notes, measurements, and clash detection. So today I'm going to focus on the scanned pipe workflow as it's brand new. So once you have your point cloud out of Register 360, you can import it into Cyclone 3DR. The simplest way to do that is to connect straight to your Register 360 database if you have that held locally. Otherwise, you can import an LGSx file, or there's plenty of support for all sorts of open industry file formats such as E57s, LAS, and the like. So it's particularly agnostic software when it comes to point cloud import. You then enter the extract pipes tool, and you can extract best fit pipe traces using the new tools available, which I'll demonstrate now. So I'm flicking here to Cyclone 3DR, and this is a small scan project captured with the new Leica BLK 360. So the second generation BLK 360 does a really nice job on stainless tanks and pipe work. The data is much more complete and cleaner than it was on the first generation BLK 360. So you can use this data quite comfortably within the pipe extraction workflow. See, I've got the scan positions turned on there briefly, showing it's a small 4-scan project. A few tips before you enter the scan to pipe tool. First is to create some limit boxes, which will help you, hide unneeded data, help you navigate around and focus in on those areas that you're interested in. So I've created a quick limit box, and I've pushed the keyboard shortcut Control Space, which allows me to edit this limit box simply by dragging the faces around like so. You can also rotate the limit box, and once you're done, Escape key, and I've got the data I'm interested in front of me. The other tip is, if you've got a particularly large and dense point cloud, would be to first decimate it or resample the data with a grid separation, and this will improve the performance of the algorithms, just the speed of them. In my case, it's a pretty lightweight point cloud, so I don't need to do that first step. So once we have a limit box set up and data decimated to a reasonable level, we can jump in to extract. And under the extract menu, there's a new tool called Scan to Pipe. And you'll find a toolbar down the bottom where you can start a new pipe trace. And the first step is to extract a straight pipe to begin with. So you simply give it 2 seed points along the alignment of the pipe, and Cyclone 3DR automatically extracts a best fit cylinder. And on the right, you'll get a histogram showing the accuracy of the points used in the extraction. And you can see here we're within a few millimeters, or less than a centimeter, which is what you would expect with BLK 360 data. You can then adjust the length of the pipe using the manual tools, and you're ready to start tracing the rest of the pipe run. So in this case, we can use an elbow extractor. So you click 2 seed points on the next straight, and it automatically extracts that straight as well as an elbow. And the diameter or the radius of that bend can be adjusted manually by eye, or over on the left-hand side there, you can specify the radius if you're aware of it. Same as you can fix the diameter of the pipes if you know what they are. And then we can carry on, so fitting each individual segment with 2 seed points and then adjusting the elbow to suit. So super simple workflow, you've guided through the steps. And once you're happy with it, you can validate the pipe trace, the button on the right, and that creates a trace in the tree on the left. Here I'm starting a new one, and I'm going to use this to demonstrate the reducer function. So when we've got a reducer changing the diameter of the pipe run, we can use this tool. and you select 2 points on the next segment of pipe, and you can see here it's failed to extract accurately, so it's used some of the surrounding point cloud data. Tempted to cut that out, but I'll show that it's not always perfect. And what I've found from experience is you can normally get a good fit by just picking a few different seed points, and it might take 2 or 3 times before you get there. It helps by forcing the diameter of the pipe and also using the symmetric tool in this case, and that's actually solved the problem. So it's now looking for data that's symmetric to the previous pipe. So once you've fitted your second section, you can adjust the reducer to fit the point cloud. Again, you could force the diameters for the first and second segments. And here I'm going to carry on and fit the next piece of the pipe, reducing it back down. There we go. So there's a couple of runs. This tool is quite versatile, so not necessarily limited to pipe runs. You could use it to model any cylindrical objects. So here, for example, I could use it to model the supporting struts of this tank here, which is cylindrical, so I can extract just individual straight pipes by accepting the trace and then starting a new one. So you could use this on cylindrical beams or tanks, for example, which I'll show you shortly. And I find the workflow just a lot quicker and simpler than fitting the cylinders with the old workflow. So that's the 3 pillars, and now I'm going to extract the whole tank just by giving 2 seed points on the edge of the tank. And the algorithm runs a little bit slower on bigger data sets. You can see there it's less fitted to the cylinder. You can adjust the top, the bottom, and now even use the reducer to model the bottom of the tank. So here again I've had some trouble fitting that bottom diameter because there's a lot of noise around it. So I'm just pushing delete when I don't want to accept the pipe. So rather than push enter, I'm just pushing delete, and then I've selected just the bottom section of that cylinder, which is nice and clean, and that's best to fit the cylinder nicely there. And then I've extruded it up to meet the top. The other thing I found is if it really won't fit to the pipe, there's lots of noisy data around it, then the best step is to exit the tool, clean the point cloud a little bit, segment a bit the surrounding data, and then hit enter back into the pipe tool, and it normally fits really nicely. But yeah, normally it's not required. So once you've got all these traces accepted in the left, you can always click on any of these objects and manually adjust them at a later time. So you can enter and exit the pipe traces quite seamlessly. So here you can change the visualization, fade the transparency of the point cloud and see how it fits. You can turn the point cloud off and see your solid objects on their own. And then the last step is to go next in the workflow, and it's some really flexible file export types. So you can export these solids in Vim format, so as an IFC file, and they would go straight into Revit or other third-party softwares. You can also export the solids as a mesh, and here I'm going to use the send to CAD functionality to send this pipe work straight to CAD as solid mesh object. So this works in BricsCAD and also in AutoCAD. That's by far the quickest way to get your data across rather than export and then import. You can also export CAD files and just the center traces, if that's all you're after, just the alignments. So yeah, there's the end-to-end workflow. Second new feature I'm going to focus in on is the scan to plan updates. So If you've used the scanned plan tool in the past, you'll know it's really quick for square rooms, but as soon as you had curves, you had to do some manual work to fit best to best fit arcs to curves. In the new scanned plan updates in the 2024 release, you can now add arcs. So, oops. So once you've entered the scanned plan tool, I'm just going to pause that. You can take a slice through your data, which has been done here, and then you can use the quick draw tools to best fit lines to these slices in the point cloud. And so really quickly, we've zoomed around the straights here, best fitting bits, and we get to our first arc. So you can manually edit into these automatically created vertices, and then you can use this arc tool, give it 3 points, and it best fits your arc. So again, start with line segments, lines, define 3 points to create an arc. It's as simple as that. So super quick workflow for extracting 2D floor plans from 3D data in a semi-automated fashion. And there's the result of a complex site. The first thing that springs to mind for me is like a shopping mall, food court. If you're doing a BOMA or a lease area survey, this tool would come in real handy for pillars or any sort of arced areas. And then the next feature is some improvements they've made with the 3D interface, particularly to do with imaging. So you'll know from the past, those who've used the software before, you can import images, kind of using them for inspection, but it was quite difficult to use those images as part of an extraction workflow. So with the 2024 release, there's been some big improvements in this area. You'll notice in the data tree now, images that are imported from, say, an LGSx or an E57 file are grouped just below your point cloud information. And you can also toggle on and off your scan positions now using the button in the top right. To enter this to the imagery, it's now as simple as double clicking on the image, so very similar to what you're familiar with in Register 360. So it's nice that the two softwares are coming closer and closer together in terms of navigation. You can have the image in the background, or you can have it in the foreground with a transparency set. So you can overlay your imagery with point cloud data, but also modeled elements in this case. So we can see our pipes modeled, overlaid or superimposed on the imagery. It's really nice if you're delivering this data to people who are not so comfortable with point clouds. They can turn the imagery on, jump around the bubble views and see extracted solids or line work or anything else in 3D overlaid on top. And this is all part, of course, of the viewer, the license-free Cyclone 3DR viewer. So this offers a really nice way to deliver data to those people without software to receive it in. So you can jump around your bubble views just by double-clicking. And then another further improvement is the ability to have a synchronized split screen. So just clicking the split screen option here. And now we can configure the content of two windows. So I could, for example, turn the point cloud on the right-hand side, and imagery on the left, and when I orbit, the two views are synchronized. So nice, again, for checking your data afterwards, but also during an extraction workflow, you can use these split screens with instructions. So we could take, for example, measurements off the point cloud. And we can also just as easily go to the imagery and take measurements straight off the imagery. So again, for those that are not comfortable with point clouds, maybe the imagery is an easier way to work with 3D data. So pretty cool improvements. The other good example of when this might be useful is with BLK2GO data, which is a little bit thinner and noisier and a bit more challenging to extract 3D data from. using the imagery from the device, the panoramic images captured by the SLAM scanner, can really help when you're picking 3D line work, for example. Right, and then finally, a couple of updates. There's lots more in the software, and there's a whole swag of new features in the release notes. The last one I'm going to focus on today is new classification models. And the road one was covered actually by Yannick in the previous ArchNZ webinar that we ran, so have a look back in the archive on that one. He previewed the new road classification, which does an amazing job with both terrestrial laser scan data and also mobile laser scan data. A couple of improvements to the BLK workflow, for the BLK mobile workflow. So this is data from the BLK to go handheld SLAM scanner, or the BLK ARC. First is the mobile people filter. So, and secondly is the ability to render the point cloud based on timestamp. So we can look at the mobile trajectory and how it changes with time. So I'm going to show you those two features now, back in 3DR. You might have seen me post this example just before Christmas. So this is BLK to go capture here in Christchurch, the Bridge of Remembrance. Really busy day in the city mall, so there are tons of people around. Normally you'd avoid moving objects with a SLAM scanner, but the to-go seemed to handle it just fine. But of course there's a lot of work now, say if you wanted to extract the ground surface here, a lot of work required to remove all this moving objects. So we can cut that short by using the new auto classification model for filtering people from BLK mobile data. And I've run this already. It takes a few minutes, so we're not going to watch it now. So I'm just going to cancel. But after that is finished, you can then go into the representation and switch from real color to classification, and you can see the result of the auto classification. And it's done a pretty amazing job at isolating all of the moving people from the static objects in the scene. So here you can then explode by class, and that splits the point cloud into the two classes in the classification, the unclassified and then the moving objects, which we can then delete or turn off. And you're left with a nice clean data set ready for some further extraction or for creating a nice clean visualization. The second feature I wanted to show you that's improved the BLK mobile workflow is the ability to import trajectories now from LGSx files or straight from Register 360 databases. So you can see the path that I walked to collect this data with the mobile scanner, and you can now render it with timestamp. So you can see how the data was collected over time. Now, should you have an issue with the SLAM algorithm, say it slipped or a rotation occurred or some problem occurred with the SLAM, it's been quite hard to edit that data in the past because it's a single scan file. So you can now, say, go into edit the colors and segment the timestamp information into steps, and then use the scalar step segmentation method to split the point cloud into several steps. And you could have less or more steps depending on the length of your walk. And so say something had gone wrong or you wanted to clean out a particular part of the walk, you can do it by time, by simply turning off or deleting particular segments of time in that walk, and allows you to keep, say, the first half of the walk without having to disregard the whole thing. It's a really cool improvement. So that concludes my section of the webinar. Back to you, Kirsty.
Thanks for that, Lennon. Both of us will now answer any of your questions. So if you haven't put any questions in the questions tab yet, please can you do that now? We've got a few that have already come in, so I'll answer those. One of the questions for me is, can you tell me what the TrueView VR is capable of? So TrueView VR works with some selected headsets. So there is a whole note in the help section on rcdocs.com which goes through the compatible headsets. But when you go in there, the key thing is that you can go in your VR headset, wander through the point cloud, but also the images as if you're actually there, and then take some measurements. So there's been some customers that have done it in like tunnel environments, and it's been quite useful because it's a confined space and they can't really discuss those tunnels without actually actually being there. So it's quite an interesting way to have some discussions about a space. So more on the visual front and then the measurements. So I've got one for you, Lennon, which is about classifications. So the classification results that we saw on screen from Register 360 and in 3DR, it looked a bit better in 3DR, was what this comment says. Do you have any preference between the two classifications, and is there any differences between them?
Yeah, good question. So they both use the same classification engine from the Hexagon Innovation Hub, but they are
you there, Lennon?
Oh,
okay. Apologies, my speaker's not working.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yes, the sound is fine now.
Okay, good question. So, but just to repeat, both softwares use the same core Hexagon Geosystems classification engine. While you'll see differences is because the versions are updated with the versions of the software. So sometimes, the latest version of Register 360 might have the later engine, or sometimes 3DR. Well, depends on when they've last been released. So 3DR at the moment has the latest generation engines, and I expect that a future version of Register 360 will catch up with it. I think the advantage of 3DR is that there's specific models in there for different environments. So in Register 360, you've just got indoor and outdoor. 3DR has some specific ones, say for construction sites or for to-go data. So 3DR is a little bit more comprehensive than 360.
Awesome. And we just had a follow-on question from that, which was about the scan data you showed in Christchurch. Does the duration of the scan, if it's a mobile scan, affect how well that classification result comes out?
I don't think so. So the denser the data, I guess, the better the classification will work. So yeah, if you've repeated walks, retraced your steps in an opposite direction and you've got more data, I imagine that would give it more data to work with. Most of these algorithms just garbage in, garbage out. So the better the data you can feed the algorithm, the better the results are going to be. So yeah, I guess the length of time doesn't matter, but the more passes you've done, the denser the data will allow the algorithms to work better.
Okay, great. And I've got two more. So the next one's for me. Do you back up all of your projects, and which method do you prefer? So I don't back up all my projects, admittedly. My general method is after a few months, if I've not been using it, that's when I would back it up. I do have a 10 terabyte hard drive that's that I use to back up some of those ones if I want to keep them. The method I prefer is the .raf file approach, just because it's compressed, but that does take a bit more time. So it's longer, but it's more compressed. So that method works pretty well for me. And quite a lot of people quite like doing the RAF method, because if they're exporting it to their local drive and they get out one file and then they're trying to transfer it across to network drives, it makes it a lot easier to track how well the file's gone across. Being just one file, you've got a less likelihood of data corruption. Yeah, I think that would be all I have to say on that one. I don't suppose you have anything to add on that, Lennon?
Yeah, I think it's right. If you've got time to do the compressed format, it's just easier to manage afterwards. But if you're just simply wanting to copy a database between storage locations, then the other method is a lot quicker.
Okay,
awesome.
So we've actually got a few scan to pipe questions that have now come in. So the first one is, in the scan to pipe, when building a tank as individual pieces, are they snappable to their endpoints, or can they be combined into one entity? So for example, a tank body or a reducer.
Well, you have to repeat that, sorry.
I'll let you take that one, Lennon.
Can you repeat that, Kirsty?
Sorry, it was a long question. So in the scans of pipe, when building a tank as individual pieces, are they snappable to their endpoints, or can they be combined into one entity?
Okay, so if you want to snap them together into a run, you're better to do it as a run, I think. I don't think, I'd have to practice, test it myself if you can combine individual entities afterwards. Might be possible, but using the run allows you to adjust them together, you know, so that they're snapped.
Yeah, there is a follow-up question which says, are the exported features from scanned pipe 3D solids, or are they parametric objects that can be manipulated in the CAD package?
Yeah, so if you go out as one of the BIM formats, like an IFC, then they come in as parametric objects, I believe, into Revit or into Bricks CAD or whatever you're using. It depends on the formats. You can export them as like wireframe meshes. There was a variety of formats there, but the actual modeled elements in IFC come through in the families.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's us on the questions. So just for next time, we have another webinar already set up. So this is actually this month, so only 2 weeks away. That's the 23rd of April at 10:30 a.m. We're going to have Jason Farr from GNS Science. He's an engineering geological surveyor. He went to the University of Otago for surveying. He's going to talk to us about Fox Glacier and some of the assessments they're doing that down there using reality capture and 3DR for the processing. I'm really excited for this one because Fox Glacier is how I got into the world of reality capture, doing some photogrammetry. So very keen to see how they're doing this work to look at how it's all changing over time. And there'll be all the rockfall that happens as the glaciers retreat. So if you have any content ideas, questions, or any feedback you want to give us, please email us at info@globalsurvey.co.nz. And thank you everyone for coming today.